Kate Fox is a modern-day anthropologist. Like Malinowski, she is a participant observer, relying on total immersion in another culture.
Traditionally, anthropologists are supposed to do their research like Malinowski did, in sort of remote, uncomfortable places with lots of dirt and dysentery and malaria and mud huts and so on. And I have a bit of a problem with that, because I have sort of pathetic, wimpish aversion to all that dirt and dysentery and horrible killer insects and primitive sanitation and so on. I like to do my research in cultures with indoor plumbing, and where you can get a glass of champagne or a decent cup of tea and do a bit of retail therapy when the natives start getting on your nerves, that kind of thing. So Malinowski would not approve. But anyway, participant observation method is the same wherever you use it. And essentially I do, in this culture, exactly what Malinowski was doing in the Trobriand Islands.
For 3 years, Kate visited the horse races, living with the racing tribe. She has faced many of the same problems that Malinowski confronted when he arrived in the Trobriand Islands.
I think everything about this tribe confused me at the beginning. You know, you walk in here through the gates, you don't know what's going on. Everyone is apparently milling about, you know, in no particular, with no structure, no form to it, and you have no idea what's going on.
But certain rules gradually became clear.
The sort of tribal greeting introduction ritual, actually that you find out very quickly. You know, if you go to the races, you'll find it out your first time at the races. I did. The rule is, essentially, the unwritten rule, is that anyone can basically go up to anyone and say, what do you fancy in the next? It's a kind of standard. It's a bit like the English say, oh, nice day, isn't it? Or make some comment on the weather. We all know that that's a conversation starter. It's not a sort of request for meteorological data. And when you say to someone at the races, what do you fancy in the 2:30, you're not really asking about the horses in that particular race. You're saying, I'd like to talk to you, will you talk to me? And the response is almost invariably yes.
The more she stayed and watched, the more secrets she discovered. At first, there seemed to be a formal tribal hierarchy. Stewards and officials were the tribal chiefs and elders. They set the rules. Horse trainers, credited with performing miracles if a horse won, were the revered shamans and witch doctors. But she noticed that at the bottom of the pile, the tribal structure didn't quite match what she'd heard from the natives.
People would tell me that jockeys, you know, are a lower rank of citizen because, you know, they touch their caps. When they come in, you'll notice when they come into the parade ring, they touch the cap to the owner and the trainer.
But as Kate was watching the small men in their bright silks, a different picture started to emerge.
You see, I'd been told that jockeys were, you know, kind of servants, you know, that they were the lowest rung of the sort of owner-trainer-jockey hierarchy. But actually, when you watch them come in, you know, they look well aware of their exalted status, you know, and they're sort of twirling their whips and doing this kind of fanfare announcing their arrival. The owners and trainers immediately, all their attention is focused on the jockey. If you look at people's feet, all the feet are always pointing towards the jockey. Feet are the most honest part of our body because we're not aware of what we're signalling. And the owners are kind of leaning down to catch the sort of pearls of wisdom. And actually the jockey is mostly sort of uttering, you know, non-threatening diplomatic platitudes. But you know, his audience is riveted.
Participant observation revealed jockeys were respected and admired, despite the formal racing hierarchy.
In this tribe, they are, if you like, the equivalent of the young warriors, the young braves, a very special elite group.
Although they hold no formal political power, their talents have a higher value than wealth or official authority. 80 years since Malinowski invented participant observation, it still has the power to reveal fresh insights into human culture.
I mean, this is essentially, I think, why Malinowski is right. And you do have to spend a lot of time, because it's not until you've kind of hung out and wandered around, you know, for quite a lot of time before you realise, you start to see the patterns in what's happening in the behaviour. And that there isn't a particular technique for doing that. It's just hanging out. I think someone's called it anthropology or participant observation deep hanging out. And I quite like that term, because that's exactly what it is. You're hanging out, but it's a bit more than that.
Participant observation is Malinowski's greatest legacy to anthropology.
You see, I relied not only on what these savages said they did, but on observing exactly what they did. And there lies the essence of my work.
Malinowski's work brought him the status and glory he'd craved for so desperately all his life. And earned him professorships in Britain and America. Bronislaw Malinowski died an establishment figure in 1942, founder and hero of modern social anthropology. Then in 1967 came something that brought Malinowski's reputation into question. His personal diaries were published. The man who'd elevated our understanding of native cultures seemed to be every bit as prejudiced as the Victorian anthropology he'd so criticised.
Last night I looked in vain for the fellows from my boat, and again this morning. Nowhere to be seen. Suddenly, I am driven into a state of white rage and hatred for bronze-coloured skin.
Some believe these outbursts severely tarnish Malinowski's reputation.
When I first read the diaries, I was shocked by the attitude that Malinowski reveals. They contain a very damaging picture, I think, still, but particularly at the time, of Malinowski's personality.
On one occasion I made a joke, and one of the bloody niggers made a disapproving remark. How dare he? How dare he talk to me in such a manner? How dare he, a nigger, find something in me to disapprove of?
Why spend your whole life writing books and founding a discipline if you are not interested in the people you're meant to be studying?
Those who support Malinowski point out that it isn't only the natives that he insults.
Another way of looking at it, which is to say, Malinowski is angry at all sorts of people in this book, and very intemperate, about the Australian administrators, about his colleagues, about some of his friends. Everybody is attacked, and above all, about himself. Nobody is criticized more fully and openly and completely than himself. So Malinowski's use of intemperate language is universal.
But perhaps his diaries reveal a truth at the heart of all anthropology. For all his attempts at scientific objectivity, Malinowski was, like every one of us, a prisoner of his own time and culture, with all its prejudices. Malinowski would no doubt be gratified to know that he continues both to intrigue and outrage. But one thing of which he was certain was his great significance and contribution to posterity.
He really did believe that he was prophet of a whole new way of thinking about human beings. He sometimes called it the new humanism. He really did feel this was terribly important for humanity, for this new thing. And a lot of his students believed it too. And it was very exciting.
Because of my work, the study of anthropology, so often mistaken for mere hunting after curios, or a ramble through the savage shapes of barbarous custom, crude superstition, anthropology might become one of the most deeply philosophic, enlightening and elevating disciplines of scientific research.